Hello and welcome back to my podcast channel. For my third episode, I'm joined by Sharon, who I have been told has a great new Napoleon film by our mutual friend Sebastian, who recommended her to fill in for a guest who pulled out. And I'm very happy that I've been able to secure her for this. Last episode, I was joined by my old history teacher, Mr. Josh Andan, where we spoke about the history movies that make men think. So please check that out if you can. And I suggest you can. But today we will be discussing the new historical movie Napoleon, picking at it in any way we see fit and giving our thoughts on Ridley Scott's epic. We will now be phoning Sharon to begin this discussion. Hello, Sharon.
Oh, hello, Jamie.
I'm very happy that you could join me today. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. I'm very happy to be conducting this interview today.
Good.
To start with, I just wanted to know your overall thoughts on the Napoleon film.
Well, I was pleasantly surprised, actually. I thought it was going to be a bit long and drawn out, but it was actually quite gripping all the way along.
Yeah.
I think the way they did it with the battles as well as the sort of love story in his life was it made it a very interesting film.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and I thought it was a very interesting film. Although obviously I've heard some other reviews and things. Obviously you talked about it being a long film, but it felt quite short. I felt like at the beginning of the film it jumped around a lot, around about his life. I think we missed out a few key parts of his life. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, it did leave some aspects out, but I don't think they could have. They were on a timeline, and I don't think they could have fitted in everything.
Yeah, because obviously, but obviously, Ridley Scott has created a director's cut for this to fit in the full version. But obviously, of course, in 2 hours and 30 minutes, you can't fit in the whole of someone's life. Of course, yeah, you have to consider that factor.
And I think they were trying to get the balance right of his sort of love story with Josephine and the battle scenes and
Oh, yeah, definitely.
All that entailed.
Yeah, no, definitely. I for one thought it was a really interesting aspect to come from. Coming from this perspective of his relationship with his wife and focusing on them to instead of more his military career. Obviously, we talk about some of the battles, but there wasn't it didn't show many because obviously he won over 100 battles, and it doesn't really show that. It shows about 3 battles throughout the whole movie, which I did find disappointing. But obviously, the aspect of this film was to kind of come at a different perspective. The perspective of obviously, like I said, of their relationship instead of his military career.
I think they did that to appeal to more audiences than just the people that like watching war films and battles. They were trying to appeal to a wider audience, maybe.
Yeah, no.
To have a love story and with Josephine.
Yeah.
The one criticism is we didn't really see much of him growing up and Corsica and where he grew up and that sort of aspect. Yeah, but again, they couldn't fit that all in, could they? So
no, of course not. But you never know. The director's cut might start off with a scene of him being young, or there could be flashbacks, and but we don't know obviously until the director cut is out. But with what we've got, we can tell at the beginning of the film that it does jump around a bit, and then obviously it gets into his relationship with Josephine, which is really interesting. And then but I feel like what we're missing from this film is this kind of like obviously we see his rise to becoming emperor, but it's very short. It's almost like it happens in a flick. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There isn't much politics behind a decision. Obviously, we see the like the Congress and stuff like that. We see politics, mentioned obviously in the film and features in the film, but we don't really get much backstory to how his rise to emperor is there. Do you know what I mean? We miss out on some significant battles that he's in, and some discussions that took place, because obviously he was a joint ruler with two other powerful people, and we don't really see how he knocks them off. And I think it's no, please.
Yeah, no, it's brushed over, isn't it? It's very but it sort of shows them sort of going, but it doesn't. It's very brushed over how that comes about. But
yeah,
he sort of outs them, and he has the rise to full power sort of thing.
Yeah, but obviously we don't see a lot of how that happens, which is disappointing.
No.
But obviously, as someone that has studied Napoleon and studied his rise to power, obviously I know what happens. But for a viewer that that is learning about this guy for the first time, they're going to be a bit like, well, how did this happen and how did that happen? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
I mean, unless you've got the background knowledge, it really does brush over things.
Yeah, but I just wanted to say, what did you think about that battle scene? With the frozen lake against the Austrian and Russian armies. Was that historically accurate?
Well, I believe much of it was. I thought the way it was reenacted was quite magnificent. Really, it was.
Yeah, I did. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was incredible.
It was incredible how they filmed that all, and how and the music that went with it, and it all sort of built up to. It was a build up to it of them setting up the battle lines, and then them coming along, and then you didn't. Obviously, you didn't know what scene it was, but it was the scene where they. Where it was the frozen lake, and
yeah, but apparently that lake. Sorry.
No, carry on.
Oh no! Apparently that lake was never actually there at the battle at Onges Litz. Sorry, I can't. My pronunciation is terrible. I've never been able to pronounce some of these Austrian Germanic words. Sorry, but
sorry.
I can't pronounce some of these Austrian German names. Sorry. But yeah.
Oh right, yeah.
But yeah, in this battle, there was actually no ice. Like frozen lake. Obviously, it was very cold conditions. Especially at the time of year when this battle took place. But yeah, also there's some historic accuracies in this scene. But overall, in terms of making a movie, I think this makes the movie look. I think this gives us this side for the first time in a movie to Napoleon that we don't really see before, because there isn't that focus on his military career that I spoke about, and then obviously we get this scene, and it is quite epic. It is something you would see in a historic epic, but it is historically inaccurate. But for a movie, it is nice to see. Yeah.
I mean, with all movies, they've got to make it. Exciting and appeal to the audience.
Yeah, of course.
So they're going to dramatise. I mean, with all films, it's not going to be entirely accurate because they are pleasing the audience and making it more of a drama sort of thing, aren't they? So, they're trying to, make it as short scene as possible, but excitement in it, sort of thing.
Yeah, of course.
Because there's a lot to cover in the film.
Yeah, definitely. But then that does leave me wondering who are the target audience for this film. Do you know what I mean? Because there is that romantic aspect, like like the type of people who are into romantics, or there's these battle scenes which are really interesting, or there's just this focus on Napoleon psychologically in this film, which I don't believe is that accurate, because it shows him to be quite frail and weak, and and especially that scene where he gets chased out of the that that palace in Vienna.
Congress, the Parliament
no.
sort of thing.
Sorry, Vienna. I mean Versailles. Sorry, that. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So when he rounds up the Congress in Versailles, in that palace in Versailles, and he kind of gets chased out of the building quite embarrassingly. Now I know for a fact that did not actually happen, so it makes me wonder who was Ridley Scott trying to target. Making this scene, because it's meant to be a kind of comedy. It's meant to have a comedy factor to it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. That makes it a bit of a muddled film, really, because you've got this serious aspect of the battles and the backstory, and then, as you say, making that a comedy scene. That was really the only scene that was like that sort of thing. Yeah. It was a bit out of place, really.
Well, yeah, definitely. I agree. I think that's one thing that I didn't like about the film, because Napoleon, he's this famous military general, arguably the greatest military general ever to exist, even above Alexander the Great and Julius Caesar. I think adding this scene in was a bit silly. I think it made him look a bit pathetic. And then there's also a scene that I'm not a fan of, where he's speaking to the to the British ambassador in France, and about Napoleon wants peace, and the British want war against this new kind of freeway governance, and Napoleon outbursts, and he says, "You guys think you're so great because you have boats." I thought that was a bit silly, a bit over the top. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But obviously, but obviously that's down to the opinion of the viewer, But it does leave me wondering who is the target audience for this film, because we've got them kind of comedic aspects, we've got these psychological aspects, we've got these, obviously these battle aspects. There isn't many of them, but there is some. And then you've got this, that action aspect, and then you've got this romantic aspect, which seems to be the main focus of the film, which I did actually enjoy, that perspective. I thought it was really nice, because I've seen the older Napoleon film, the 1970, the one made in the Soviet Union at the time, and I really enjoyed that. And there's a lot of focus on the big battles and stuff like that, but we didn't really get that romantic aspect, which I think we really got in this film, which was nice. It was nice, but I think calling this film a historic epic was a bit of an overstatement, because it didn't feel so epic. It wasn't to my expectations. I thought it was going to be an incredible film about Napoleon's rise to power, and what a great military leader he was, and maybe some of the mistakes he made along the way, and stuff like that. But obviously Ridley Scott took a different approach to this film, with the romantic aspect that I've mentioned before.
But the thing is that in these other films, all he's been portrayed as a great leader, this strong character. But everyone has weaknesses, and I think it shows that Josephine was the weakness, because
definitely.
it showed him strong in the battles, and then weak in his personal life, because Josephine basically didn't treat him that well.
Yeah. And that is an interesting aspect.
But then she had to put up with a lot from him, his moods and whatever. So
yeah, it's an interesting viewpoint to come from Ridley Scott, and I did enjoy this. I thought it was very interesting to see their relationship, the dynamic relationship between these two, and their ups and downs, and there was a lot more downs and ups, and that really brought down Napoleon, mentally, and but I think I would have liked to have seen more of his military rise. I think that's one thing that I take from seeing this, and one thing I hope to see in the director's cut is more of a military rise. But yeah, obviously the focus of this was obviously the romantic focus.
What did you think about when obviously he was exiled to
Elba?
To Elba. Was that's the first place?
Yeah.
And then he came back, how the soldiers reacted to him when he came back.
Well, I think that scene is incredible. I think it's probably one of the best films. Sorry, one of the best scenes in the film. It really does show how loved Napoleon was by his soldiers. That close relationship that he maintained with them throughout his whole military career. He was one of them. He
was really respected by them. I thought that sort of displayed in that they respected him until the end, despite all these casualties, obviously, in earlier battles.
Yeah, like the fatal march into Moscow in 1812. All them aspects. About all these. Because there was a lot of casualties on the French side and with all their allies, and a lot of this was down to Napoleon's battle strategies. But yeah, I thought it was incredible to see his relationship with the soldiers in that scene. I thought it was really nice. But I think what I would have liked to have seen, because they're quite famously, when Napoleon was exiled for the first time, in fact, he gave a speech about how he loves France and how he loves his soldiers, and all his soldiers were all around him, and and it was quite incredible. I think that would have been a really nice thing to see, because that does show that relationship more with the soldiers. Because obviously, in that scene when Napoleon comes back, the soldiers, they're so happy to see their emperor again. They're like, "Long live the emperor! Long live the emperor!" But I think, and obviously, there's a scene where Napoleon hands out bread to his soldiers, and obviously he leaves on the front line sometimes. And there's even a scene where he does a cavalry charge with his soldiers, which didn't actually happen, but they put that in the film. But I think early on in the movie, I think it would have been nice to see more of his relationship with the soldiers. Do you know what I mean? But because that's where it came. His rise to power. Was through his
came from that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you've got to support the soldiers.
Yeah, exactly. And quite famously, at one of his most famous battles that took place in Italy, he was manning the cannons, getting dirt all over his uniform, and at one point the soldiers. They even went in for a massive suicide charge because Napoleon had encouraged them so much, and I think some of these aspects would have been really nice to see in the movie. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. You're right there. I think that could have been brought in, because that could have been been quite brief. Throughout the movie, like at the start, you say. Obviously, we had it in the middle of the movie.
Well, yeah, I think that could have been quite inspiring, because I feel like this movie does portray Napoleon as a bit of a, what's the word I'm thinking of? Do you know what I mean? It presents him as a bit of a, short man syndrome in a way. Do you know what I mean? Even though he wasn't actually that short, but he seems like this angry little guy. He's so upset with Josephine, he forgives her. But I feel like the film portrays him as quite emotionally weak and stuff like that. Which is obviously that backstory, that backstory relationship with Josephine. But I think I would have really liked to have seen, more of him encouraging his soldiers, more of him, having authority over people. Do you know what I mean? Especially, we come back to that scene where he's get chased out of the palace, in Versailles. He gets chased out of it. He isn't the man who's just won loads of battles all across Europe and gone to Egypt and made some little advancements there, but then obviously they got sent back from Egypt. That was a failed campaign, but yeah, obviously at this point Napoleon was quite well known, and he was quite respected and maybe even feared. He put down revolutions in France, revolts in France and stuff like that. And at this point he's quite respected. So I don't understand why in this scene he's being chased out of the palace by all these congressmen. It really does confuse me, but obviously it's cool when they go back in with the guns and he's like, now should we vote? That's really cool, but I don't really think that we needed that scene where he got chased out.
No.
Yeah, and then he falls down the stairs and stuff like that. I thought that was a bit silly.
Makes him look a fool.
Yeah, it makes him look a fool, because I don't actually think that happened, did it? But yeah, I thought it was a really cool film. Yeah, but let's get our overall thoughts on the film. I thought it was a really interesting film, and it was cool. This aspect that Ridley Scott came from, focusing on the romance. I thought that was really interesting, and I really did like Vanessa Kirby's character. Josephine, and Joaquin Phoenix was good as Napoleon. Overall, I did really enjoy their performance together.
Yes. Are you want to come around the back? Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I quite agree. Yeah.
Well, but yeah, let's wrap it up there. But thank you very much for joining me today. I would really like to get you on another time for another podcast. That'd be great.
Okay. Well, really thanks for having me.
Well, no problem. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
See you later. Bye.
Oh, thank you. Bye-bye.
And that was Sharon Howes, and I'd like to thank her for joining me today. We had a really interesting discussion about Napoleon. I love speaking about Napoleon. He's one of my favourite historical figures, and this movie for me was very interesting to observe. And I would like to talk more about it more in another episode. That'd be very cool. But for now, peace out, and thank you very much for joining me.